KPFK 90.7 in Orange, San Bernardino, Riverside, San Diego, and Los Angeles County, 98.7 KPFK in Santa Barbara, and all around this wonderful world at kpfk.org. I am Gustavo Arellano. Go to radioga.blogspot.com to leave all sorts of commentaries, whether profane or brilliant. And that, of course, was Toots and the Maytals, Pressure Drop. A little bit of summer ska weather for this brutal heat wave that we had. But also pay attention to what Toots was saying. Pressure drop, oh, pressure drop. Pressure's going to drop on you. May that be a Valentine to the Turkish government who refuses to acknowledge, even almost 100 years after the fact, the Armenian Genocide. With me is Andrew Kizirian, who's the executive director of the Armenian National Committee of the Western region. But before we talk, Andrew, I want to make a confession to the audience, really a testament as to one of the reasons why I do follow any issues with the Armenian Genocide. The Day of Remembrance is April the 24th. Gentle listeners, I was not always a progressive. In fact, I did not realize that social activism was the way to go until my senior year in high school, when during my confirmation classes for non-Catholics, us Catholics like to get all these sacraments, in confirmation class, our teacher talked to us about the importance of always not just telling the truth, but talking against social injustice, to always call out social injustice wherever it may be and to attack it through activism. And as an example, he used the Armenian Genocide. I didn't even know Armenians existed at that point in my life, growing up with Filipinos and Mexicans and Gabachos. But he told us what the Armenian Genocide was, and then he told us how there's a monument, the Martyrs Monument in Montebello, in the city of Montebello, and how the Turkish government for decades has tried to eradicate that monument. And as a 17-year-old kid, that really affected me. It bothered me that the suffering of so many people was not only ignored and not acknowledged by a government, but that it also was that there was activism against it. And from there, I went on to, of course, become an activist and a journalist and all those wonderful things that have happened in my life. But I owe it all to just remembering the Armenian Genocide. And so thank you so much, Andrew, for being here.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you,
to talk about this. And so on April 24th, there's going to be rallies all across the world. In Southern California, there's going to be a rally in Montebello at the Martyrs Monument. There's going to be a protest outside the Turkish consulate here in Los Angeles. There's going to be marches in Little Armenia. So, for the outsider, though, people might wonder why April 24th. What is the significance of April 24th and the Armenian Genocide?
April 24th is very significant for Armenians the world over. It's the day that marks the beginning of a systematic campaign by the Ottoman government in 1915 to eradicate, pretty much wipe out the indigenous Armenian population of the Ottoman Empire.
Go ahead.
And that resulted in an enormous amount of casualties as a result of the systematic campaign of extermination. Estimates run at least 1.5 million people killed as a result of this government policy.
Wow. Give the background of why the Turkish, or the Ottoman, to be specific, it wasn't the Turkish Republic, it was the Ottoman Empire, but why the Ottoman Empire chose to target amongst many, many groups, chose to target Armenians.
Well, it's a good point you brought up. You made a distinction between the Republic and the Ottoman Empire. Many Turkish officials treat the Ottoman Empire as the predecessor and their own republic as a successor of that tradition. So that's something that should be really keyed in on, that the empire and the republic are really the same state.
Okay.
That was reduced in size as a result of what happened during World War I, fighting on various fronts, while the genocide was taking place internally.
Yeah.
So that's an important point, and it has a lot to do with culpability, and that issue that relates to the genocide and the perpetration of that crime.
But why did those officials target Armenians?
The reasons are clear historically. Armenians were a very accomplished minority in the Ottoman Empire. They had succeeded for years and decades, centuries, in fact, as merchants, politicians, musicians, craftsmen. They offered a serious source of intellectual capital to the empire in ways that other ethnic groups have also provided for other empires in other parts of the world. And over time, when a certain movement, the Young Turk movement, the Ittihad Party, took control, their ideology was very different. And relied more on some fascist ideas and getting rid of certain groups. And the Armenians were considered to be a subversive element within the empire, and this was used as a pretext quite obviously to various officials that were there from the United States, our American ambassadors and consuls general.
But even before the genocide happened, even before the Young Turks, there had been massacres of Armenians before. Like in the 1890s, the Havasi?
Yeah, and Sultan Abdul Hamid was known as the Bloody Sultan to the west because of massacres he had ordered in 1894 to 1896.
Okay.
And so there was a tradition of massacre as a solution to any kind of problem. Just go in and the state would wipe out, either with its own forces or by orders to certain militia forces that would be let out of prisons.
And of course, after the genocide happened, there was a worldwide diaspora of Armenians. Many of them, of course, came to the United States in Fresno and the East Coast, and more recently here in Glendale, California.
Yeah, there are communities all over the world. The United States was a prime destination for many folks as the genocide was occurring. My own family being one of those cases.
Wow.
And many others settled in various places all throughout the United States and the world, like you said, East Coast and areas in New England and the Mid-Atlantic, and also in Fresno, and also spread to other areas.
Excuse me. When did recognition or when did commemorations of the genocide start happening amongst Armenian diaspora?
Commemorations have been going on ever since the crime was committed.
Okay.
But it became more public and more vocal. I think it coincided with the civil rights movement in the United States in the 60s. 1965 marked the 50th anniversary of the perpetration of the genocide and its beginning. And with that social awakening that occurred in the United States in the general population and society at large, Armenian Americans and I think Armenians all over the world saw this as a call for social justice and to promote the end of denial of this crime and to urge recognition of it and to provide for a just solution.
It must be noted that the sociologist Raphael Lemkin, the man who coined the term genocide, was, I don't want to use the word inspired, but was motivated to create that term from his own experience noting the Armenian genocide.
Yes, there's actually TV footage of him referring to the Armenian massacres as the reason why he engaged in this formulation of this new word. And that was before the Holocaust was beginning, and as the Holocaust was occurring, that's when it kind of calcified into his crime of barbarism, into genocide, which was adopted by the United Nations, by the convention that was adopted by various countries, the UN Convention on Genocide Prevention and Punishment. I think the U.S. ratified it finally in 88, after William Proxmire, prominent senator from Wisconsin, gave more than 3,000 speeches every day.
Oh, wow.
And the convention was around since 1949.
I'm speaking with Andrew Kizirian. Andrew Kizirian, he's the executive director of the Armenian National Committee of the Western Region, and we're talking about the Armenian genocide, both its ramifications in the past to modern-day relations, and the various protests and rallies that are going to be happening in Southern California this Friday, April 24th. Can you name some of them off the top of your head? Or?
Oh, of course. I mean, there are so many events taking place at this time of year, especially in such a large community like Los Angeles. There will be a community-wide commemoration in Montebello at Bicknell Park, which is the one of the oldest monuments of the Armenian genocide. I believe it's also the only one dedicated on public land. It was dedicated in 1968, and the community for decades has commemorated the Armenian genocide at the Montebello Monument. That will take place on Friday afternoon. Elected officials and others will also be there as well to share in honoring those that perished. And later in the day, there will be a protest organized by the Armenian Youth Federation, which will be taking place at the Turkish consulate, which is here in Southern California.
You could Google it for the directions. Raphael Lemkin created the term genocide based on the massacres of the Armenians. There's commemorations all across the world. Most historians call the Armenian genocide a genocide, yet the Turkish government refuses and gets upset when somebody pushes the issue and they say it wasn't a genocide. It was just deaths that happened.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point you bring up. Most historians, the International Association of Genocide Scholars, which is the preeminent genocide studying organization, has unanimously referred to the Armenian genocide as genocide on numerous occasions, to presidents, to legislatures, to everyone. If you will find that any historian that has nothing to do with receiving funds from Turkish institutes or Turkish government sources, and recently we've seen that with the Brookings Institute and other disclosures that have been made. We've seen that certain money has come into certain think tanks and other chairs, and that has muddied up the direction of these entities with an influence that's superfluous to the original purpose.